this is going to be our first of many community workshops. Weekend workshops are super fun to do with the Storyforge, and there's no point to make all these videos if we don't apply the principles. So why don't we go around to all of our guests and go ahead and introduce yourself to Encounter Roleplay's audience. Let's go ahead and start with Dan.
Hi, I'm Dan Gaston at MadSideDM on Twitter, avid player and a DM running a large West Marches game, and hopefully future streamer at Variant Roles.
And Burlingsbeard.
Oh yeah, I'm Ken at Burlingsbeard. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter. My website, I'm a concierge DM in the New York City area. Super excited to be here. This is going to be awesome. I can't wait to talk about this world building.
And from 2C Gaming, Ryan Service.
Yeah, my name is Ryan. I am a writer over at 2C Gaming and their community manager. I get to write and make stuff for 5th edition for my job, which is fantastic. So thanks for having me.
So we're going to circle back now and talk a little bit about tribes. So tribes are often defined by bloodlines and family relationships. In a tribe, typically you can identify the headsmen or matriarch, shamans, rulers. You can find their immediate goals, what the tribe hopes to accomplish, who the enemies of the tribe are. You can find how they reward members of the tribe, how they punish members of the tribe. And typically when you put these societies together, it's not very difficult to figure out, if you were designing it specifically into an adventure, who in the tribe would give out quests, who would give out rewards for accomplishment, who might be banished from the tribe, define why they're banished, and also figure out who or what in the world the tribe's fears. So let's go ahead and I'd like each member of our cast today to start defining a tribe. And when we think about tribes, city-states, and nations as societies, there's usually a shared culture, a shared language, and shared traditions. Let's start by defining tribes and the components that make up a tribe. So tribes are typically defined by bloodlines and familial relationships. Think about an overgrown high school clique. Essentially, the struggles within a tribe are often very low stakes, and to overcome those struggles, the tribe remains unified and always puts the tribe first. We're going to start with Ryan. Ryan, I'd like you to think of a tribe that's unified through bloodlines and familial relationships. Who is the leader of your tribe? And if you want to take a step back and explain your approach, that's perfectly fine. You can discuss what maybe species the tribe is first, or if it's multi-species. Go ahead and introduce us to the leader of your tribe.
Yeah, sure. So the leader of my tribe is Vargan Goldscale, and he's going to be a lizard folk with a dragon draconic ancestry, as he's a sorcerer. And what he's trying to do is convince his tribe that they actually have a draconic bloodline and that they are just a variant on Dragonborn. So he's trying to fool everyone into thinking that lizard folk are related to dragons, and is using his draconic ancestry as a sorcerer to prove this, right? He's showing them through magic we can unlock the secrets of our ancestry. And what he's actually trying to do is just raise an army of lizard folk sorcerers, right? Because lizard folk generally have some trouble getting organized, have some trouble practicing the magical arts, but he's motivating them. He's showing them that they're not just reptiles, that they're this actually descendant of this ancient and noble race of dragons, where in reality he's just being a bad person and manipulating his people to serve his own ends. But it helps give them a bit of a bloodline, right? It helps develop where they're coming from and gives them a motivation and cool, like, you know, the players can try and expose them when they encounter them or things like that.
Excellent. And Dan, why don't you define for me a leader of your tribe? Maybe start with your species, etc.
All right, so I have a tribe of Goliaths who live in a frozen wasteland. Their society is matriarchal, so the leader is the eldest woman in the tribe, and she is a warlock. Her name is Itiara, and her warlock patron is, we're going to flavor it sort of using the Great Old One, but it's a little bit more shamanistic. So in reality, her patron is like her ancestral spirits.
And Burling's beard?
That's awesome. Yeah, my leader of my tribe would be a human. She would be a very old woman who would, I guess, what you could. Her name is Adelheid. Her people live in an ancient forest that has long, tall trees, but their branches are almost like needles that come out of them, and they sort of have to appease this ancient force that lives in this forest, and that's sort of their god. And so she leads her tribe to sort of serve that sort of end. And so she has like this like straw, like sort of auburn hair that comes down like very long, sort of below her shoulders. She has sort of a crone's face, a very wrinkled, puckered lips, sunken eyes, and she herself would have druidic powers of a type. And I think that part of her tribe would be trying to lure in travelers or wayward adventurers to sacrifice to their god.
The leader of my tribe is going to be an individual who calls themselves the Raven Queen. And she's going to be a raven folk who is banished from the world tree to this world and has been over time gathering followers. Now, most of her followers are wild folk. They're people who have lived on the outskirts of society, and over the years she has banded them together. Her unnatural long life has allowed her to live for over 300 years, and currently the goal of the Raven folk tribe is her tribe, the Raven Queen's tribe, is to perform a ritual to open a portal to the World Tree and find her a mate, because she's trying to establish a line of succession, but they're having difficulty doing this because the wild folk are not familiar with many of the old magics, so they've been raiding caravans and travelers trying to find magic users that might be able to perform the ritual with the Raven Queen to open the gate. Something I mentioned there was my tribe's goal. Let's go ahead and recap what could be a goal of each tribe that we're designing here, as well as an enemy of the tribe. What does the tribe hope to accomplish, and who do they hate, or who hates them? Let's go back to Ken.
Yeah, so the goal of my tribe is definitely to try and snare travelers to appease their dark god, as it were, this ancient entity that dwells in the forest that may not be a deity per se, but is definitely an ancient force that they revere. And so I would say that the people, though, that they hate, I would actually say that they almost hate themselves and they almost hate their own god. And that's sort of brought up in how they preserve their dead after they die, where they don't bury them and they don't burn them. They actually keep them around. And so they're almost like mummified and left in different places. And so, yeah, that's sort of where that's going, what's going on with that. I think they would also sort of like hate the travelers and the people who actually did come to them. Though I would also think that they would maybe incorporate some of those people into their tribe if they were strong enough or blessed enough, quote unquote. I don't know, something like that.
That's awesome. I actually really like it. And we're going to, yeah, I was like, man, and you can sort of see as we start to do this, you kind of almost picture the world map in your head. Yeah. And it's just like there's these people and there's adventure hooks. We're going to throw it over to Ryan now. Ryan, I'd like you to describe to me, you mentioned some of Vargan Goldscale's original goals when you first mentioned him, but go ahead and describe on a tribal scale the goal of the tribe and also the tribal enemies. Who hates them or who do they hate?
Yeah, so I think the goal of the tribe is a combination of ambition and sort of a manifest destiny. So the idea here is that they're looking to better or improve themselves, or what they have been told will better or improve themselves. and they see those who would stand in the way of this improvement or look down on them for trying. So, for example, there will be a nearby colony of Dragonborn who think that they're being really stupid. And they're just like, well, dragon magic just happens to have influenced you, but you're not actually one of us. And it's not going to come from a place of malice, but sort of just like general disrespect. It will say, like, you're uneducated, you don't understand. And this makes them really, really mad. Because, you know, as far as they're concerned, they're not hurting anyone in this pursuit, but this will create tension and antagonism. And when they encounter each other, they're going to, you know, talk some smack, might get into a couple fights. And then the conflict might increase in scale as the lizard folk do meet with some success, become more powerful sorcerers.
Increase in scale? Was the pun intended? Sorry.
No, but we can pretend that it was. I think the goal of the tribe will start with just like a self-improvement thing, manifest destiny, like we could be more than we are, and it will turn into, no, the reason we aren't what we are is maybe because these Dragonborn nearby keep us down, or like the civilized races want us to be this way because they're scared of what we can become. And yeah, the conflict escalates, and the tribe starts having to pick a fight or two.
So they're expansionists? Sorry. They're expansionists?
Not like by land, but sort of like by themselves. Like maybe they are tired of living in the swamp and they start using magic to elevate their cities out of the water, right? The magic they've learned. They start, you know, casting spells to remove wildlife that's plagued them for years and drive into other civilized lands. They more clearly define their borders, and that could be interpreted as an expansionist thing, but it could also be interpreted as sort of like, you know, they've always been that way. It's just they've been able to be ignored up till this point.
I kind of want to use these guys immediately in my Pigton campaign, because the players are right there at Agadilio's Marsh, which is populated with lizard folk, and all they know is that kobolds have been in large quantities abducting lizard folk, and if it turned out that some of them had, like, say, that draconic bloodline, they're essentially trying to bring them and give them as gifts to a black skull dragon, and essentially be like, all right, we've raised an army for you, we abducted all these lizard folk. Man, yeah, I like them in your setting too, and yeah, I'd love to play out that conflict between Dragonborn and lizard folk. And now we'll throw over to Dan. Same question. The goal of your Goliath tribe, matriarchal, warlock-driven, shamanistic Goliath tribe, and enemies of the tribe.
All right. So their goal that they see is a sacred duty. So they inhabit a territory that at the center of which is a ancient city with ruins that was a magical city whose leaders had been consorting with fiends. And so it collapsed when they had opened a portal to the abyss. And over time, this Goliath tribe has inhabited this territory. And they've taken on this sacred duty where they see that the spirits of their, you know, valorous dead and their, you know, most powerful sorcerers go to do battle to keep this gateway closed. And so their society is structured around, you know, training for this afterlife of duty. The problem is their territory is also quite rich in some natural resources, and to the south is a very mercantile and expansionist human culture who is constantly trying to encroach on these lands to, you know, mine and take the resources. And, you know, their methods come through, you know, tempting away younger members of the tribe and trying to, you know, lure them away and do business. They don't understand this sacred duty that the tribe sees it. So the tension there is sort of between old ways and the new, but there's an actual sort of cosmic conflict underlying.
And the enemy of the Raven Queen's tribe, in my tribal design, is actually going to be the human civilization to the west. They don't like that the wild folk are getting so brazen and coming closer and closer to society. They don't like that they're attacking travelers, merchants, etc. and their goal is to either exterminate the tribe. They're essentially going to give them an ultimatum: go live somewhere else, settle down, stop roaming from place to place, and for the love of all things holy, please stop attacking the merchants and the caravans. It's very, very bad for business, and we need business and our system of economics in order to thrive. This is how our world is. These are the rules of our world, and you guys are kidnapping people and taking them and attempting to make them perform these horrible pagan rituals off in the woods, and that is unjust, unright. All right. I like to keep it simple on the Grant side. So now what we're going to do is we're going to look at how the tribe might reward members of the tribe and how they might punish members of the tribe. So starting with Ryan. Ryan, how do members of the Lizardfolk tribe reward members of the tribe, and how do they punish members of the tribe?
They reward members of the tribe by giving them a gold paint job, essentially, to make them look more Dragonborn-like. They basically get a cosmetic upgrade that makes them look more like the supposed ancestry they're trying to emulate. Now, obviously, because Lizardfolk anatomy on a fundamental level isn't quite there, they look a little ridiculous to everyone but them, but their culture has made it seem like this is very cool, so it's like they'll think they look amazing and awesome and what they're supposed to look like, but to everyone else they'll look a little silly.
I want to go on the quest to get golden paint as a player. Like that's
yeah. So like they might steal player gold when they're camping and then turn it into paint. So when the players go to get their money back, they just find a gold painted lizard folk being sort of like, my bad, can't get this back now. In terms of punishing members, it would to emphasize their sort of like primal or base heritage, so they wouldn't get to wear anything nice. They wouldn't get to look Dragonborn-like, so there would be a huge emphasis to make them look sort of tribal and primitive where they came from. For them, status and blood heritage is going to be a big focus, even though at the end of the day it isn't really real. It's going to be a completely fabricated like levels of achievement, so you can sort of get demoted if you screw up, and then you get sort of like a cosmetic promotion if you succeed. Bonus, the players can easily identify which ones are playing, the leaders, because they'll visually be, looking as might have fake wings or things.
Yeah, I was
like
gonna
that.
say the fake wings.
Yeah, they'll have a cool aesthetic going on that might make them look a bit silly, but make them stand out.
Cool. And Ken, systems of reward and punishment for your tribe.
Yeah, I love it. I think a system of reward would be like body modifications, like that the tribal member would start to grow horns, or their feet would start to turn into hooves or something like that. Their legs into like goat legs, or sort of more like stag legs, so they could run faster. Like the members of the tribe would start to change in terms of their body, and those to reflect sort of their god, as it were, the deity within the wood. Those members that would sort of be punished, I think, could take a range of different things. Maybe from like not being given food, so you're becoming weaker, to something like being like left out in the elements, so that you're gaining levels of exhaustion, if you want to put it in D&D terms, which is very interesting rules to check out. And then finally to be sacrificed to the god, like so that your body is then, used in those sort of rituals and or sacrifices to that sort of presence within the wood.
Sounds like a party.
Yeah, it sounds like a party that everyone wants to go to, right?
And Dan, how does the Goliath tribe reward and punish members of the tribe?
All right. So since they have this sacred duty, I think that they have some elite warrior societies that revolve around, various totemic animals. And so their reward and promotion system, is like the first stage is being inducted or invited to join one of these warrior societies as like a recognition of your abilities, with, sort of some promotion and ranking systems through that are then reflected, sort of playing off the body modification bit, is that, they do some extensive tattooing that sort of signifies your status within the tribe. And it's thought that these tattoos that you carry transition with you to the afterlife to sort of signify your deeds in life, which then affects your status in the afterlife in this, war, keeping this abyssal gate closed. And so similarly, the punishment is mostly the inverse of that. So where people can obviously get demoted to the point where, being forbidden from being a warrior, so being restricted to just doing, manual labor and that sort of thing is sort of shameful. And then with the final status being exile from the tribe, where again you were ritually tattooed, but this tattoo signifies you as, the ultimate shame. And so when you go to the afterlife, you'll have the lowest possible status.
That's cool.
And the Raven folk tribe, or the tribe of the Raven Queen, they're not actually a tribe of Raven folk. They're essentially humans. The reward is they're actually granted feathers from birds, and the feathers are affixed to their body. The more feathers you have, the more honor you've brought to the tribe. And also sleeping arrangements. If you are a lowest ranked member of the tribe, you essentially huddle together in a mound of bodies, trying to keep warm in the wilds. But as you've more and more proven yourself, you're given accommodations, you're given a tent, eventually you're given a longhouse, and eventually your house is positioned closest to the Raven Queens. And essentially the form of punishment is they depuck you, and they just pull all of your feathers off of you. And then there's what they call the pecking, where they all take sharp sticks and, they drive them into you until you cry out in pain, until you eventually you black out from the pain. And after that, you're brought back into the tribe. You're not necessarily exiled, but you have essentially been marked. And you're also demoted. They take your status from you, so you have to go back to sleeping in the mounds. There's just the masses of body, and they give your house away. Yes. So my question for Ken now would be, if a group of adventurers found your tribe, who would be someone that might give a quest or an adventure hook to the player characters, and what would that look like? How would it relate to the tribe?
Totally. Well, I really like the idea of using languages in game very, very heavily. So I like to think that my tribe wouldn't speak the common tongue. So it'd be very difficult to communicate with them. So the quest giver would be someone who could speak that language, or at least speak it in maybe a rudimentary way. And so this would be someone who is probably lower tier in the tribe, someone who might be not as inculcated into the sort of ceremonies and ritualistic sort of hierarchies of the upper tribe. So I see my tribe again as sort of more antagonistic towards adventurers, though I think some adventuring parties could probably work with this tribe if they wanted to. But specifically for a quest giver, I think for adventurers, I think that person I'm talking about, who is sort of like almost like, a woodcutter or, a water drafter, like someone who does more manual labor, who's more like could give information and say like, oh, this is where you can find the god, or this is where you can find some of the secret areas in the tribal area village, and that's sort of where I would go with it. I think for some parties you could go to sort of the leader of the tribe, but I honestly think for my tribe that leader is more of an antagonist and someone who's more scary and someone who's more of a sort of a fearful sort of character, and I would want to preserve that, not by making them a quest giver to some degree.
Same question for Ryan. If a group of adventurers encountered your tribe, what would that look like? And what type of adventure hook might they receive from the quest giver?
Yeah, so I think assumedly if the adventurers weren't burning everything in their path and were just traveling and they came across this tribe, depending on how respectful they would basically sort of get moved up and towards the people they talk to. And in fact, the lizard folk want to seem accommodating and civilized and really want to be open to adventurers exceed the prejudices that they normally experience. They want people to feel like they're very different. So if the players sort of buy into it and sort of stand on ceremony to the excess that they will, because they don't understand how to actually be polite or super civilized, they might make them do silly things like bow in between, every 5 sentences or something like that. They get actually brought to the leader of the tribe because he has a goal in mind, and he has a scroll of true polymorph. And he wants to use this scroll to turn himself into a dragon, straight up, permanently. But he doesn't have the skill to cast it, so he needs help. He needs the players to find various components for him that will aid him in casting this spell in a specific ritualized manner so that the ritual is successful and he can become a dragon and lead his people. Obviously, he's mostly doing this for his own personal reasons, but, if it ends up helping out the rest of his tribe, it's a win-win for everybody. But obviously, the local dragonborn or some people might have a problem with that. They might think that that's a somewhat objectionable course of action.
And Mr. Dan, go ahead and describe your quest giver and adventure hook that comes from the Goliath tribe.
All right. So in my games, I like to play with this tension with civilization and the wilderness quite a lot. So I can imagine that my players would probably end up getting their adventure hook from the expansionist society to the south, and it end up encountering this tribe and then having their expectations kind of flipped around. But in terms of interactions within the tribe and adventure hooks, I think the status plays a big thing. So until you've proved yourself, the only people in the tribe who will talk to you are people who kind of think that they're sort of similarly ranked to you. So initially, you're only going to be interacting with these junior members of the tribe. And I think the adventure hook that would initially come in would be to prove themselves through a series of single challenge combats with multiple members of the tribe until they've established where they fit in the tribe's hierarchy. And what level of status they achieve within the tribe. And then as they go, they start learning more about this society and what their goals are and what they do.
My tribe, the quest giver is actually going to be a middle-ranked member of the tribe. He has a decent amount of feathers. He has some scars from where he got pecked when he was younger. But he's essentially someone who has witnessed the players in combat before. Perhaps he's seen them overcome a great foe. Perhaps they've slain a hill giant by this point. Or the players have driven off the Raven Queen's tribe before. And they're essentially going to attempt to make... essentially going to try to contact them on peaceful terms. And they're going to attempt to recruit the players to clear out the location where the Raven Queen intends to hold her ritual, to go back to the World Tree to find a mate. However, their tribe isn't strong enough to cleanse that location, and it's also very dangerous, but they've witnessed the players in combat and respect their prowess, so they're going to attempt to strike a deal with them. And my question for Ryan... describe to me someone who's been banished from your tribe and why they were banished.
So someone who might have been banished from this tribe would be a person who doesn't believe the leader, who says this is a farce, like he's figured out, or she has figured out where the source of their power actually comes from. It's not from an actual physical ancestry from dragons. It's just, at some point dragon magic gave him the ability to access these magic powers, and that's as far as it goes. And that the sort of forgetting these old rituals, these old ways of the lizard folk that served them well, didn't allow them to, or prevented them from getting into conflict with other races. They lived in peace. They lived happily. Their society was well structured. There weren't these arbitrary castes where people were dressing up in ridiculous ways and spending money on superfluous things. And she feels really strongly that, it needs to go back to its old ways, not because she's a traditionalist, but more because she just doesn't feel like this is a good direction for her people to go in, and can make a fairly compelling argument to that point.
We haven't made any bone weapons in years.
we haven't eaten our dead. Really.
Yes.
And I'll be honest, that's a real problem. They're sort of piling up, and otherwise, it's getting really gross, and
And Ken, describe to me a member who is a former member of your tribe who has been banished, and why they were banished.
I love this idea, Grant. I think it's so important to talk about this and hit upon this. And in my tribe, I think, as we all realize, the banishment in my tribe is probably death. So I would actually think a member of my tribe who was quote unquote banished was actually someone who escaped. And so this could be a way that a player could hook into this. They could be an escaped member, it could be a background. And the thing about the forest that my tribe lives in is that compasses don't work there. So finding your way there, because what is being guarded by the deity, as it were, is a fabulous, And so for my part, I like the idea of an escapee, someone who's like, we're being controlled by this evil presence. Our tribe is actually under a tyranny. And so it's almost like a sort of a reverse, a rebellious, or sort of a resistance act to leave. And that's sort of how I see it. And so that could be something that either it could be a quest giver, I guess, if you want to get into it, or it could be a background. Or you could find a dead body and, find, artifacts of this tribe. There's so many different ways that you could go with that. But that's sort of where I would land.
And same question for Dan, a member of the Goliath tribe who was banished, and why?
All right. So this Goliath is probably a little bit older now, but was originally banished when they were young for transgressions against the tribe, which involved essentially helping these humans to the south exploit resources on this sacred land purely for monetary gain, which is a sort of a big no-no for these people. And so this person has been banished from the tribe, and they've made their way to the south and have been working sort of as a mercenary or adventurer, perhaps, for some time in their own way, trying to fulfill sort of these ingrained things for their tribe about testing oneself, proving oneself, and building up reputation. They've sort of developed their own system of, tattooing themselves, perhaps, based on misremembered half-known knowledge from when they were younger. But really, this person desperately feels the shame of what they did and wants to get back and be somehow reintegrated with the tribe. And so that could serve as a great opportunity for a plot hook to, get some adventures and help redeem themselves in the eye of their leader.
And a member of my tribe who was banished will be a very old wild folk man known as Gray Feathers. And he only ever accepted the feathers from birds who died of natural causes, or birds that they had found. He spoke a different language than the rest of the tribe. He was fluent in a variety of languages, such as Giant and Dwarven, and even some Elvish. So he may have had some education. He was suspected of being a traitor, and if you dig a little deeper into him, he was actually a scholar from the cities that was putting together a study, so he attempted to infiltrate the tribe and just sort of become as one of them, until he eventually was found out as he just wasn't accepted. He just didn't quite fit in. He smelled a little different. He didn't sleep in the right ways, so they just couldn't accept him. And if you find him, he actually has a lot of information on the tribe, but he still, essentially wants to live in the wilds, and he'd love to get more information because he has to finish his books, and he thinks it's a study that will put him on the map. Don't ask me where that came from.
After my own heart. He's got to finish his dissertation.
He's got to finish his dissertation. Gray feathers.
Oh, old gray feathers. So, and then
guys.
I have a question for Ryan now. What does your tribe fear more than anything in the world outside of the tribe?
I think the thing they're secretly all afraid of the most, and they'll never talk about it, is that a actual dragon will show up and just call their bluff and say, because I think all of them suspect deep down that what they want is probably not true, but they'll never admit it. It's one of those dark things. And they're scared that one day a dragon will show up and just say, "You're all just wrong, all of you." And that's all it takes. And their whole society collapses, right? Because nothing has more authority than that, because that's how they built their society around. And conveniently, there isn't one around to tell them they're wrong. So that's what scares them, and why the leader wants to become one, because then he can say, well, no, I'm one too, and I think you're wrong, and then there's no debate. But otherwise, if there's no dragon to say otherwise, there's no debate. It's over.
And the next question is for Ken. Outside of your tribe, what does the tribe fear the most? Who or what?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. I think, it would be easy to say the deity within the wood that they fear. But, I think that they fear the absence of that deity, because then they have to deal with what they have perpetrated in the name or in service to this power, this entity. And so I guess I think that's why they hate adventurers to some degree, is because they fear the absence of their deity the most. They fear that the death of that, because then what are they? What are they? Why have they been doing what they've been doing? To some degree, they have to sort of take ownership of that and live with that. So I think, the tribe has a much more of a insular psychological sort of thing. You guys can't tell, I've been playing a lot of Strahd recently. And so, I think that the tribe, though, if anything, maybe a rival deity, like someone else who shows up and just lays waste, or there's some sort of convergence or conflict that takes place. And I think that they probably use omens and bones and prophecies to try and find if something like that is coming. And who knows, maybe that's even part of their lore, that something like that may come in the future. Who knows? But that sort of, I think, is where I would go with that.
In the Raven Queen's tribe, is the thing they fear the most are cave trolls. The cave trolls are the number one cause of death for members of the Raven Queen's tribe. The reason they are so nomadic is the trolls have been pursuing them and hunting them down. They're easy prey because they're humans that don't really take shelter in any real technological or quality of life way. They just kind of pile up outside at night. They're easy targets, and they're not very strong. They have large numbers, but the trolls easily startle them. Not to mention the trolls, they really would like to capture the Raven Queen and take her feathers and turn her beak into a cup that they might drink from, believing it will give them immortality, since she is from another plane. So that is who they fear the most, and they do a pretty good job evading the cave trolls, and that's how they fit into the world. Now, one last thing I'd like to do with each of us as we examine building our tribes is think of a fantastical element of magic and wonder that kind of touches either the area your tribe lives around, or something within the tribe itself, or something in the community. So something out of the box. And I'll go first with an example of this. Where the Raven folk live, the trees in the forest that they collect materials from to build their primitive huts and shelters sing very sad otherworldly music in a dead language that no humanoid race knows or comprehends, not even the Raven Queen's tribe themselves. But if you go to that forest, on every new moon, you will hear the trees sing, and it's a special time of reverence for the tribe, and it's something anyone can hear, but that's a fantastical magic quality that surrounds their tribe and community. I'm going to throw it to Ryan now to add a touch of magic and wonder to his tribe.
That's a tough one. I think to add a touch of magic and wonder to the tribe is an ancient sort of well that the lizard folk used to use from long in their past, that when filled with the blood of another creature and then drank from, they can assume qualities of that thing. What's interesting about that is it comes from their old history, which they're trying to leave behind, but may present one of their best options to actually achieve what it is they want. However, to do so will involve them, if they want to become Dragonborn, for example, killing a mighty host of them and pouring their blood all into this pool. It can also create an interesting option for players to use, because maybe they too want to assume qualities of other creatures. I would add the caveat that the creatures have to be humanoid, so you can change your racial traits to increase playability and make it interesting, but at the cost of an atrocity, right? Or executing a lot of evil guys who deserve it, which some people might still argue is a bad thing. And then it creates this old world versus new world vibe of the lizard folk tribe, and creates some interesting scenarios, hopefully.
It's very inventive, very creative, and yeah, it's definitely a touch of something magical and wondrous. Ken, go ahead and give us a magical, wondrous, fantastical element that sort of surrounds and is integrated into your tribe and their culture.
Totally. I think that that aspect would be about their cooking practices, in that they use sort of these sort of sacred herbs, these sort of plants that they're able to collect from the forest. And it's one of the reasons I think that their life is sort of made better by living in the forest, that these herbs make just their people stronger and faster. That's why not giving someone food is very important in the culture. By sort of denying someone that sort of sustenance, you're literally making them weaker, less powerful, as the case may be. And so I also think that there is this sort of reverence for fire. And so like continual flame is very important in the society, especially like marking pathways, specifically ritualistic pathways where you might have like a sacrifice ready for the god to like appear and come down the pathway and like collect or something like that. And so I think that they have fire on all the time as well, that they sort of conjure using magic.
And Dan, a touch of magic and wonder and a fantastical element for your Goliath tribe.
All right, so they have this ruined city, of course, at the heart of their territory, where this abyssal portal is supposedly lies. And I think that in general, they don't go there except for once a year, where there is a pilgrimage of, the tribe makes a pilgrimage there every year with the warriors who are coming of age as part of their coming of age process. And in the heart of the city, they don't know where the portal is, but in the heart of the city, there's a large square. It was the city square with these like sort of forest of glass spires that they have to walk through and engage in this ritualized combat that's meant to draw blood but not kill anybody. And the blood seems to feed and activate these crystal spires, which then triggers them going into these hallucinogenic trances where they kind of relive past elements of their tribe and gain sort of insights into this supposed war in the afterlife that they're destined to join. So it's meant to sort of seal their, compact with the tribe and prepare them for what's to come.
For our viewers, if you want an example of tribes and tribal structure using the very same techniques we used here, I advise you to research the Uthgard barbarian tribes in the Forgotten Realms campaign setting, particularly tree.
What's your favorite tribe, Grant?
Well, I was going to say, not necessarily my favorite tribe, but one I suggest they research is the Tree Ghost tribe that lives in the high forest with elves. Specifically, you can see that there is a bloodline that's been established where Borvald Orkbane has 6 sons, 3 daughters. He has given an oath bow as a tradition to each of his children that came from their elf friends. That they hunt orcs. They were descended from another tribe, the Blue Bear tribe, that died attacking Hell's Gate Keep. And so you can find this tribal structure, and it has this rich tradition through fantasy. Let's go ahead and everyone, we're going to go around and sort of plug where you can find us online and some of the projects we have coming down the pipe. Let's start with Mr. Ken Burlingsbeard again.
Yeah, you guys can find me, Ken at Burlingsbeard, on Instagram, on Twitter, on my website. I also have a podcast where we do diceless, DM-less storytelling role-playing games. It's called Board Ghost, Boered, like you are a bored person. Check out my YouTube where I've done Secrets of Hammerfast, a great live stream, and go to my website of the same name, Burlingsbeard. I'm a concierge DM in the New York City area. Hire me to run your games.
And soon to be world-class #1 ranked online Twitch streamer, Dan Gaston.
So the best place to find me online is Twitter, at MadSciDM. That's my main one. Or you can check out at Variant Roles, ROLES, which has very few followers at the moment. But that's going to be the home for our upcoming Twitch stream that we're looking at streaming a subset of my Large West Marches campaign. With some players that are going to go to a big, fantastic city coming from the frontier. So it's kind of flipping things on its head a little bit.
And Ryan Service.
All right. Well, you can find the company I work for at 2cgaming.com, where we make all kinds of fun stuff for 5th edition, most of it through Kickstarters that we have funded. So if you like Kickstarting, you should definitely check us out, because that's where we do most of our work. We have a lot of cool books for you to try for various aspects of 5th edition. You can also find us at 2C Gaming on Twitter, and on our website you can find a link to our Discord, where you can come and tell me all the things we do wrong and give us good ideas for future products, which we love to do that in the way that you're from people.
Until next time, this is Grant Ellis with the Story Forge. Next episode's going to be on building city-states and nations, sort of a continuation of this theme of world building and nation building. Thank you much, and have an excellent day.